Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Morrall. I am the Director of Prevention and Outreach at Hope for Horizons. Hope for Horizons is a children's advocacy, domestic violence, and rape crisis center. So our goal is to create safer communities by changing the culture of violence and offering safety, hope, and a path to healing for survivors of child abuse, domestic violence, and sexual assault. We serve Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton, and Colleton counties, as well as Allendale County, specifically for our Children's Advocacy Center services. So April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. What we wanted to do today was to focus on child abuse prevention and awareness by having a conversation with one of our community and statewide partners. So I want to thank Sue Williams, the Chief Executive Officer of Children's Trust of South Carolina, for coming on and having this conversation with me. How are you, Sue?
I'm great, James. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's jump right into this conversation.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about Children's Trust of South Carolina and what it is that you all do.
We are a statewide organization. Unfortunately, a best kept secret. We focus on the prevention of abuse and neglect of children. And I say best kept secret, we act as an intermediary on behalf of the state of South Carolina. We get money in and then give it out across the state for child abuse prevention programs, not treatment, but prevention programs. So things like home visiting, parent education. Our problem is people know the direct service programs that we give to because they're in the community and often don't know that we're the ones behind them, providing training and technical assistance and funding for these programs to exist.
Good deal. Okay, well, great. So Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. What does Child Abuse Prevention Month mean and why is it important?
Well, I always tell people years ago, they didn't acknowledge that child abuse was happening. And we now know decades later that it happens in every socioeconomic, geographic, and every culture. Child abuse does happen. And so when we first learned that it was happening, people didn't really know what to do about it. They just thought that we create this family bubble and people don't want to intervene, and yet a child's been hurt. So they would remove a child and go to foster care or something, or maybe with another family member. But we didn't really understand how to prevent it in the first place. The stressors that happened, the learned behavior that parents have from some of their upbringing, right? And so you fast forward, we now know about brain science. We now know about evidence-based programming. We know so much more. And so we say, we can get on the front end of this. We can keep bad things from happening in most cases. We'll never wipe out evil. But for the stressed parents, for those who just snap in the moment when we have those opportunities to get ahead of that, to give them the coping skills so that they can be the parents they want to be.
Okay, great. So talk specifically about the state of South Carolina. Is child well-being really a problem? Is it an issue here in South Carolina? Can you talk to me about that?
Sure, and that's why we use April to highlight what we want for every child. And we use the pinwheel symbol, which doesn't stop child abuse, but it starts a conversation. And to your point, what we want for every child, happy, healthy childhoods with opportunities to thrive, no matter where you are, what zip code you're in, and which family you're born into. You have the opportunities that your family and you as a child in the state can do well. Unfortunately, we don't have equity across our state. And so it really does matter what zip code you're born into. It does matter what family you're born into. And until we can achieve that, South Carolina is going to lag behind, because when kids are distressed at home, where they spend a good part of their day, when they get to the school, it bleeds into that, right? And so if they're thinking about all the things that happen at home, they're not really focusing on learning. And it affects us and our workforce then. We now know that things that happen when you're a child actually affects your adult health. And so again, if we can get on the front end of it, we can talk to people about what they can do to prevent abuse and neglect of children, then South Carolina would be a much better place for all kids.
So I hear you talk a lot and you reference a lot about families, right? Mm-hmm. How does supporting families or families as a whole play a role in child abuse prevention?
So every family is different. Not just, the mom, dad, or grandma. If families look different. Sometimes grandma lives with you, sometimes they don't. Sometimes aunt and uncles live with you, could have a lot of kids, could be just one kid. So families look differently for everybody. And even if you have, a mom and dad and 2.2 kids or whatever the, census says we have, even that is very different. Culturally, geographically, every family is different. So it's important to talk with families and see where they can get help or ask for help. But asking for help is hard sometimes. We Americans think we can just do it all, right? And I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to help you. But for me to ask for help is really hard for us to do. And so we're trying to change that culture, that asking for help is really a sign of strength. Nobody does this on their own. Even if you think you do, there's people along the way that have helped pave the way for you to get where you are today as an adult. And so some of the things we know we can do intuitively, like if a new baby is born, we might bring them a meal that's a little less stress, right? You might offer somebody a ride if their car broke down, and not wait for them to ask, but you offer help when you can. But there's some other things too that people don't think about, like that are really helpful in preventing. Coaching a baseball team, teaching Sunday school, being a role model for a kiddo these days, we now know from evidence is huge for these kids to have a safe space where they can decompress and they can be a kid.
So how can the community, both individuals, organizations, play a role in child abuse prevention and awareness, not only in April, but beyond the month of April?
We would love it if it was all year long. And there was another city, and I'm blanking on where it was, but they did a citywide training, and they talked about how if we really wanted to be a community that supports kids, when we make these decisions, we should be asking, how does this affect the kids? If we're changing the bus routes, how does this affect the kids? If we're changing, street lights, how does this affect the kids, and how parks are? Asking ourselves, how does this affect the kids? Again, we tend to think that it's the family's responsibility, but no family can do it alone. And some families are doing the best they can with 2 jobs, or someone's sick in their family, and a little extra help goes a long way. And so being mindful that even if it's not your own children, but somebody else's children, you can be a real help to that family all year long. You don't have to wait till April. You can really do it. Like I said, coaching a baseball team or a basketball team or teaching Sunday school. Those are things that you can do so that that parent isn't having to try to figure out how to do that too, so their child has those opportunities.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you one last question that I want to leave it with, because I know everybody is busy and sometimes we don't often have a lot of times to, sit down and listen to these at-length conversations, but I'm glad that you came on just to kind of give us some education about what we can all do and how we can all play a role in child abuse prevention and awareness. So thank you for that. So Sure. Lastly, I'll just ask, what message would you want the community to take away after watching this interview, after learning a little more about Children's Trust of South Carolina and Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month?
Sure. So I always say this work is bigger than even us. If we had someone to be in every county, we still wouldn't be everywhere we need to be. So we need to do it in partnership. And we know that kids do well when families do well, and families do well when they live in communities that support them. So everything from, as I mentioned, the bus routes and how things are, where childcare is available, all of those things, if we think about as a community and how we want to invest in that for the children to have opportunities to thrive, then we all would be better in South Carolina.
Awesome. Well, Sue, again, thank you for having this conversation with us. The work that you do, the work that we're involved in, and everyone else across the state who are partner agencies with Children's Trust of South Carolina, I just want to thank you all for all that you all do. Protecting children, helping families, just doing the work to make our world a safer place is something that we can all back behind. So thank you again. I appreciate the conversation, and take care.
Thanks, James.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.